The top right, as the yellow Terran, he is GuMiho.
Something kind of neat, by the way, about the TLO True False, just to kind of piggyback on your point, both of these TLO True False for the final one, to do with the Shopify Rebellion players, could be proven to be true by Hero Marine being defeated. He's the gatekeeper. What? He's the
I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. You're right. Once again, the gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper. There we go.
Yeah, not a top 4 Europe like he said himself, but actually this time of the Rebellion players making it through. That is cute. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think we'll get there when we get there as far as that TBT. I actually think that is another very exciting match, because maybe you're rolling your eyes and being, okay, come, Zombie Grub, you're doing the caster thing, you have to say everything's exciting. TBT really isn't that exciting right now, and I kind of agree with you, but I do think that Beyond tends to make it a little bit more action-packed. But we're not in that match right now. We are starting with the upper bracket matches. So GuMiho versus Serral, usually not a match that I think a lot of people, the majority of people, would be hyped about. Of course, the diehard Serral fans want to see him play. The GuMiho fans who just love his creative take on StarCraft 2 would love to see him play. But in general, it might be viewed as a stomp. But all that changed when Homestead Cup attacked.
Oh my God, you really went there. I love it.
I did, yes. GuMiho, of course, 2-0ing Serral. Very, very surprising results. Has made this now a cracker of a matchup.
It certainly has. It is I would even go so far as to say a firecracker of a matchup. It is. I mean, you've primed us already. I'm ready to go. I'm excited about it. And without further ado, we got to get into it, because we've got something very cool that has formulated, and we've seen a few Terran players starting to do this more and more. It is Command Center first. It is that quick double orbital, is that greedy play, and no Reaper, it's straight into a Marine. So this is eventually Zerg players are going to have to start doing stuff like Proxy Hatch Ravager just to punish builds like this, because there will come a point where you don't want a Terran player to get away with a CC first. It's not going to matter. There's a Marine here anyways. But if that was like 4 lanes and he gets right in underneath that factory, that could have been problems.
That's true. That would have been very annoying. Eventually handled, of course. The relatively simple pullback and pull of the SCVs. But yeah, there are ways to annoy these things. But as far as your point about actually punishing a CC first, that is kind of the weird thing about a CC first, is that it doesn't get punished by a lot of non-extreme options, right? So yeah. Best case scenario in a StarCraft game, when you see something, you can react to it, but not so much that you just you call it an all-in, right? If you can react accordingly and just get better, ahead because of it, then more power to you when out in the strategy game. But that's not always the case, and certainly with CC first, it's not like a pool first. 16 pool actually does very much to it because it finishes. So that's kind of the weird thing about it, is I do wonder why we don't sometimes see it more. But there are a couple of truly punishing builds. Not that Serral would be the one you would consider to actually go for them, though.
No, and that's why going for something like a CC first against Serral is such a good choice. He's always going to be confident in his macro play for good reason. He's extraordinarily good at it. And it makes sense why you would try and kind of punish that confidence a little bit. That being said, it's not like every other Zerg player at this point is playing Proxy Hatch Roach Ravager. I don't think I've seen it in a pro match in some time. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
I was wondering, I saw those 2 gases come down, right? And, fairly quickly. And I was wondering if this was going to be a Battlecruiser build, basically from the first time we saw the CC come down, just because GuMiho does a lot of Battlecruiser builds. And sometimes off of Command Center first. But this one is still going to be a bit different. The Banshee barely survives. As it is coming out literally after Banshees. Usually a lot of the time the Banshees would be, even a fake, maybe just a Viking. But this is actually going to be 2 cloaked Banshees into the Battlecruiser play. And then mech from there, I suppose, which, we saw that happen in Valencia and in some high-profile matches. Maru, of course, leading the charge for a lot of Terran players out there. And we wondered if mech was going to really make a resurgence afterwards, and it was like, not really. you know. But GuMiho would be the type of guy that's in meta or not. He does like his battlecruiser. He does like his mech.
He certainly does. We call him the Gumi God for a reason. He loves that mech more than anything else. Now, we got to mention from Serral, he's gone for a 3-hatch Spire play. I would say 3-hatch Muto. Okay, there are Lings. He's good. He's fine. He's gone for a 3-hatch Spire play. I'd normally call this 3-hatch Muto, but in this case, the Battlecruiser will likely come out well before that Spire is complete, so it's almost certainly going to be Corruptors, as it should be, but we'll see if he decides to... He's got to jump across the map with the first PC, right? Like, there's no way he holds it back for that long.
I would say usually not, but as it is a different opener, and it is GuMiho, who's a fan of some trickery, I suppose.
Yeah.
I could actually see him waiting until Yamato's done.
That would be kind of cute.
Okay. He does not. I mean, I don't think there's too much of a reason, honestly, just because by the time the motto's done and 2 battlecruisers are out, there's even more options for a Zerg player to handle the battlecruiser, but considering that a lot of times not even the battlecruiser itself that does the damage, but rather opens up the Hellions, it does make sense to transport across the map instantly, but now, that's what you were talking about, that Spire finishing, yeah, does that battlecruiser just die?
Oh, hello? Okay, well, I was super certain he was going to go Corruptors, but it is...
Can we get another check on what Serral has scouted across the map? Because this is... Okay, it is the Roach Warren. Okay, so he actually didn't see the he didn't see the Fusion Core, but he also didn't see the 2 gases, and of course some factories. So he actually, you know, was probably under the assumption that it was bio, and that he was going to go into just a fast Muta build, right? Which isn't necessarily what I was predicted from Serral, from Serral, but yeah, it still works out against one battlecruiser that was already injured, though.
Yeah, especially since it's teleports on cooldown, it can't get away. And fortunately, he got there just before Yamato finished. I don't think No, he didn't lose a Muta. He was able to pull them back, transfuse them up, keep them alive. Well done by Serral overall. And, I mean, that's a pretty strong start, even going for the Mutas. Obviously, you're not going to get too much done with them. I think the Corruptors are a much better choice. And you've got to be expecting that GuMiho is probably going to go into more species, into mech. But he's going to be able to find a couple of Cyclones, which is pretty nice, actually. It's not huge, but it will open the door for the potential of a big 1-1 kind of max-out timing with Roach Ravager Bane.
That's true, yes. I'm just generally worried about the amount of units that GuMiho is going to have.
Yeah.
You know, because Serral does have the option. He knew exactly what he's doing. Oh, excuse me. I'm totally not prepared to cast the first series today. I think I want some more water. But anyways, because Serral now has the option to do what I think he is doing, right? He's getting all attack upgrades, and you could just go for a handful of anti-air options. You know, so Corruptors, definitely the safest choice. And then go for a big old Roach Swell. I mean, thinking back to when mech was a thing, more so. Like almost every game 2.5 years ago. This was a very popular way to respond. As soon as you figured it out, you just streamlined your build as a Zerg player to go for a bust with actually the exact things we're seeing right now. So now it's up to GuMiho to hold. And can he actually do so? He's 1-1's going to finish, so that is something for him. But
it's going to be tough.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
And it is that double attack upgrade setup coming online right now. +1 vehicle plating is actually not going to finish quite yet. Don't think it's going to be too impactful, but he does force the BCs to teleport away. Well, there's like no static defense actually at this base.
Yeah.
Thors are out to deal with the Mutas. Maybe that was the Muta play in and of itself. We're going to see Serral starting to break through here. Already one BC going down. Another one is certainly going to fall, and I think Serral has done the damage already in this game number 1.
Yeah, this is basically a stomp, unfortunately, for GuMiho. But it is the case. A couple things, right? GuMiho's opener, while a CC first was gotten away with, I don't think that's actually so much a supercharge, really. I think sometimes it can be very brutal if you're going into a very swift bio follow-up, and that can be quite scary, but, I mean, it does give you the economic boost. It just isn't that... It's not what I would be more concerned about, GuMiho's build working or not. I'm thinking about those Banshees that didn't do a whole lot of damage. I'm thinking about the Mutas actually doing some damage, not just getting those Cyclones that you noted, but then forcing perhaps too strong of a response on those Thors. Because a lot of time what we'd see from the Terran, when again, this was such a common dynamic, was that they would go into tanks, I think a bit faster than GuMiho did here, and then they'd also add missile turrets to help out against the Corruptors. So they'd still have the battlecruisers, they'd have those tanks, and then they would have just barely enough of a defense. But what we saw in that game was a little more like GuMiho wasn't anticipating the bust strategy, which is very possible that he was not. He was thinking that Serral was going to play a super long macro game, but yeah, he just got cracked so easily that, you're like, why can't I do this in my latter games? Well, you're not Serral, but then also I feel like, sometimes the latter opponents would have gotten into tanks immediately, and they would have gotten missile turrets immediately, and it would have been all about turtle. GuMiho actually wanted to do a little bit of damage, right? Banshees, Cyclones wanted to get out on the map, and then they just really didn't do anything.
Yeah, there's a couple of really great decisions that Serral made that I kind of want to highlight a couple of things. You highlighted most of them, which is phenomenal. There was just to highlight the Muta point. So I think the only reason he goes for that is because he knew he could kill that first BC. And I think that kind of allowed him to realize, okay, I can still go for this, still afford to have enough money to get like 6 Corruptors, because normally 6 Corruptors isn't enough for that bust. But he kept all his Mutas alive, which is still a little bit of anti-air. We think of them as sucking against BCs, but they're still going to tank damage. They're going to keep the BCs away. And then you add in a few more Corruptors. That's still good. That's still power. He gets a little bit of damage done. Even then, you mentioned the Hellion run by is like the big point of contention. There was an attempt to try and do that. There was an attempt to try and get in there with the Hellion run by. Serral got on top of it with the Lings, but then he did something very, very wise, which was pull back the Lings and just let the Queens kind of shell them away, because it would have been really easy to stay there for a little while, lose all the Lings, and then actually give GuMiho the chance to run by. And then even at the end, the BC, Serral paid attention to which direction it was facing when it teleported, and he tracked it down from that point, knowing it could only go into the top right corner. Very, very clever things out of Serral.
Well, complete domination for game number 1. Let's see if GuMiho can bring it back in the bottom left. As the purple Zerg, it is Serral.
And in the top right, for Psystorm Gaming, it is GuMiho. I feel like we're probably not going to see mech on Inside and Out, right? This is such a good map for tank pushes. You still can go for it. It's still a decent mech map. But I feel like the power of this map really feels like tank pushes are the way to go.
I could agree. I will. I think it's just mech was so stomped last game, and that's not exactly the end-all be-all case for mech, right? Because a lot of what GuMiho's opener did not work out. The Banshees, the Hellions, the Battlecruiser. But it still was a pretty, I guess, good sign that Serral was going to adapt very quickly. And then, yeah, the map, which Maro was doing a surprising amount of mech, more so than I was thinking. I remember I was casting one of the... Yeah, it was versus Reyna. Oh my gosh, that was such a long series. Oh my god. And then there was the finals as well versus Dark. But anyways, I remember talking with Wardy, I believe, and just being like, well, yeah, he's probably going to do it here, right? And then he would actually do it. And I don't remember exactly what map it was, so this is not exactly extremely helpful. But the point is, it really seemed like for a hot second, maybe Maro was going to lead the way once again for the Terrans and say, actually, this is a mech map pool in general. But I do think we've kind of like settled on 2 very good maps for mech, which would be the last one, and then... Ooh, I don't remember the other one right now. Hold on, let me look it up. Not Cosmic Sapphire. Beta C, Moondance, Stargazers, Tropical Sacrifice. There you go. That was the other good one that I think Maro really bothered a lot of Zergs with.
I think Moondance is a pretty good mech map too, despite the short rush distance. There's so many tight, choky areas. You get that free back base. Even though it's only 1 gas, you can get up to 4 bases very quickly, which is a big problem for mech players, and one of the things that makes mech weak. Even though Serral didn't attack the 4th base in that map, it was as GuMiho was trying to take his 4th. And, you know, if GuMiho turtles up a little bit more on 3 bases, with turrets, with more tanks, he probably has a much easier time defending. So a map like Moondance, where you only really have 1 point of contention on your 4 bases, even though it's kind of wide open, it's still, I still think of it as one long front. It makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, I know. I certainly can add that to the list as well. I do think that there is a little more option to the defensive Terran style, which might be an added bonus to the whole already being a Terran map pool. At least that's the gist. We have a cool opener here from GuMiho, but an even cooler opening from Serral. Serral is going to add in a little bit of cheese right now, getting that fast Roach Warren. Certainly still not known as a cheesy or all-any player, but being a tournament champion of many tournaments, you do occasionally have to add in a little bit. And certainly if he thinks he's going to have this wide open opportunity, because GuMiho keeps playing perhaps greedy and or odd openers, more power to Serral. And I do think that GuMiho is going to be caught by surprise. A Hellbat push against Roaches? It's awkward kind of quick. It's not end of the world for GuMiho, but it is more awkward for him, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm certainly not envious of GuMiho's position right here. That being said, the medevac does provide a lot of micro potential. If Serral gets caught with a few Roaches in weird positions on the map, maybe 2 or 3 of them get picked off on their own, it could still be okay for GuMiho. But if Serral's all bunched up, all of his units are together, he's going across the map as one, I am very worried for GuMiho, and it looks like that's what's going to happen here.
So what you do in this situation, I think, for GuMiho is that since he did have the Marines added in, this was the Marine medevac version of the Hellbat push, I think you might still go for a little bit of aggression with the medevac, but then you just hold it home with the Hellbats. I'm actually really surprised, and by hold at home, I just mean buy time, of course, because the Hellbats won't actually hold entirely. But I'm kind of surprised that GuMiho's not doing that. So he goes for the medevac drop, okay, but then the Hellions are going to try and go for even more drone damage, which is going to turn us into almost like not exactly a base trade. There's no way that any of these units are going to kill a hatchery or a command center, but effectively an economy trade, which might work out for GuMiho, but the tank coming out, the Banshee coming out, yeah, maybe it is going to work out. Maybe this is the right decision, just barely in time with the transfer over to the appropriate unit production.
Yeah, very well done by GuMiho. Oh, we are going to see the Roaches getting on top of this tank, but that's where the Banshee comes out. Man, it would have been really easy to underreact and think that a tank or a Banshee would have been enough, but that would have been incorrect. And now we see Hellions coming in onto the 3rd base, going to find a ton of damage. 28 drones have already fallen here, and Serral is really hurting. They've both taken big blows. The one thing I will say that is going for Serral and is really not ideal for GuMiho is the fact that he's only on 2 command centers. They both took big damage. Obviously, it was more significant. We got the Shopify battle report popping up right there, showing us that it was 15 SCVs to 29 drones. Really random little push. This is a very GuMiho move, by the way. You get attacked and you grab whatever you have and you try and get something.
I liked it until he just kind of let a lot of injured units die. 4 Hellbats fully healed would have provided a lot of buffer for the attack, and then the tank also would have been repaired eventually, but instead, all the buffer was killed, the tank still wasn't repaired, and the Banshee could have only covered it so much, and then of course when the Queens got pulled forward, it wouldn't be able to help out very much more. So, one of those things where theoretically it might have been a good idea, but I am very happy that he pulled it back, realized it wasn't going to work out. So at the end of the day, yes, Serral definitely took more damage for certain. It's literally a fact, but the question is who's better at transitioning out of this, basically, both as a player and kind of as a race, not to start any arguments about balance, but just design, right? So, you know, when we have a huge lull of time, who is able to take advantage of that a little bit more? Perhaps the Zerg player. That's kind of still dependent on whether they have, you know, actual larva to bust out as many drones, the economy's not so severely injured that they literally can't make all the larva possible, those type of questions, right? But Serral, he was kind of already on the ball. You know, he almost coincidentally took care of that would-be push, and then was just droning hardcore behind it. So it feels like this is one of those games where everyone would look at this and be like, oh, well, Terrans and their mules, and the 3rd siege just finished, and Serral was so economically hit. But Serral is going to choose the right moments to build units versus drones and still come out ahead.
And of course, that's such a fundamental part of Zerg. You have to know how to do so, and Serral's obviously one of the best at it. We don't even talk about it anymore because the top players are just also good at it, but Serral is no exception. He's very good at that. He is adept at it. I will say, this looks like he thinks it's mech again, because he's getting roach upgrades, which he can play roaches, but I don't think he would want to. The thing that makes me think that he thinks it might have been mech was that very quick infestation pit. Now, does he continue with it, and does he maybe go for an incredibly fast hive?
That's a good point. I think I agree with you about the infestation pit, because while the roaches make sense considering his lack of speed on those lings, yeah, the infestation pit is a little bit... It means greedy, basically, you know, to do against a bio player that's going to have more of those pushes than a mech player, which, you know, they sometimes have some of their tricky opening builds that has a push, but oftentimes they're waiting until 180 supply and then a big push as they max out. So it definitely does, yeah, I think add credibility to it, but it also could be that Serral just thinks he can legitimately get away with it. I mean, he gets the infestation pit, and then still, with you know, while seeing that it is in fact bio, there is going to be a push in the mid game. Still goes for a Hydrosen and a hive. I mean, it just feels like the openings should have made him so much more hesitant. Made him go, oh, wait, well, first I have to get a huge army, and then I can go into tech, and then maybe I'm only going to get 65 drones, and instead he just gets everything, and we're like, okay, Serral.
All right, chill out. You don't stop.
Exactly. Like, can you please just stop making Zerg look as good? Oh, he gets the Raven as well.
Oh, that's actually so expensive. That's 2 high value units. Obviously, the tank getting picked off hurts, but losing the Raven as well means you no longer get to clear creep for free. You're going to have to spend all those scans. This army of GuMihos does look very scary. But Serral's going to have his 1-1 done. He actually did get into lane speed, and he's, wow, now adding on +1 melee. Okay. This, huh. Okay, so this tells me that he almost definitely thought it was mech, right? Because this, even with a setup that was so oriented towards going straight Roach, Ravager, Hydra, Lurker, Viper, he still wants to go for the melee upgrades.
I'm thinking about it, and I'm just like, it's very possible, right? I do also see how the... Well, I guess the only thing that I'm kind of just like, regardless of your point or any other point, is like, okay, if you're gonna get back into lings and melee, like, where's the banelings? I guess is what I'm usually thinking of, is that there's usually a transition kind of away from roaches almost entirely. Like, you make a handful into ravagers, then you go ling, baneling, lurker, hydra, and it's fair enough. But yeah, no baneling us, so that's the only reason I'm like, okay, maybe this is just he really thinks that lurkers are gonna do fine with their +1 missile, which they certainly still do, a lot of splash, and then he's thinking about some run by opportunities with also some very quick adrenal glands. There is a Baneliness finally on the way, so we'll eventually have that. Has been taken off. There we go. And the upgrades that I'm mostly worried about, right, are the lurker upgrades. Seismic Spines finishing as Serral goes for this break.
Yeah, this is looking very scary for GuMiho. We are going to see the tanks sieging back up, but the Abducts going to take care of both of them instantly, and now GuMiho's got no chance of pushing in here. Serral takes a very advantageous fight with the high ground, with everything. It feels like GuMiho needs to get something done, but I just don't see any way. And the reason that I say it feels like he needs to get something done, his ghost transition feels very far away. It feels like he will not have an answer to these lurkers for quite some time.
GuMiho kind of responded about as quick as one would expect from a Terran player, I guess, when he saw that it was going to be a lot of roaches. He was going to do his push. Serral was not scared of it apparently at all. Doesn't afraid of anything. And pulled back, sieged up, and got a 4th CC. But still, maybe his plan, right, was to get a little bit more of a push going, so it really isn't the greediest build we've ever seen, and all the opening stuff also kind of offset everything, right? So yeah, usually maybe if this was this really passive, simple game of TVZ, GuMiho would have gotten a 7.5 minute 4th CC, 3 extra barracks, make a total of 8 2 minutes ago, and also already adding on Ghosts. But it is coming down a little bit later. It's opening up this opportunity for Serral to get these upgraded lurkers, to get these Vipers into play, and even get an offensive attack before Ghosts are out, and that is the worst case scenario for a Terran.
Yeah, you simply can't afford this kind of transition on such a poor economy. He's just now getting some SCVs over there. The 4th base was sieged almost instantly. Serral, I think you just keep the pedal to the metal. Try and break that 3rd base while you see that the army is out of position. Really nicely placed tank from GuMiho, but it's going to get taken down very quickly. And I don't feel as... I feel as though Gumi's just so vulnerable for such a long period of time right now.
Oh, it was scary. When Serral busted in through the middle of the map, and there's no ghosts, I was incredibly scared. But the one thing that was going well for GuMiho there was that it was a huge concave. His army actually was already coming in from both the 4th and natural, as opposed to just being in one location. So Serral wisely backed away from that. And now we do have ghosts, which means that even if GuMiho maybe loses momentum or control, I guess, of the situation a little bit, which he's never really had control, so pretty much right, Resum speaking, he at least has something to answer for, right? Because the worst case scenario for the Terran is having only tanks and marauders and then having to beep-bop back and forth between all the lurkers burrowing with their, upgrades, burrow speed and lurker range. Now that there's ghosts, there's a little more punish for Serral. He can't just be all willy-nilly with just lurkers too, which I think might have been more of an option. Bring over 6-7 lurkers by themselves. Again, Marine Marauder concaves can only do so much. And now we get to see the prowess of GuMiho's late game. Can it match, basically, who we consider to be the best late game player, Maru? Yeah. Sometimes, I think it can. But other times, quite a task.
And this is going to be quite a task against a Serral who, in my opinion, has a tempo lead and a tempo advantage. He's going to try and get in on top of these, well, this very large Bioforce that is pretty much on its own. Abduct coming in on another tank. Well done there. Serral is going to disengage as the ghosts show on up, but he's continuing to take decent trades. He hasn't kept GuMiho off the 4 bases, but he's keeping him off a 5th, while setting up his own 6th base, and even going into a Nidus Worm. We've got the Infestation Pit with that Pathogen Glands coming on down. The upgrades are looking great for Serral. He's already on a solid upgrade setup, getting into that +3 melee, the +2 missile to join up with, I believe he's already got +3 Carapace. Even getting Neural Parasite, which could be an indication that he wants to go for the Burrow Move Infestors, maybe. Yeah, there we go. We got Burrow completing as well. Maybe could go for an EMP on the Ghosts, kind of turn them against their brethren. But yeah, you said it. GuMiho did a good job of covering a very difficult period of vulnerability. Great concave coming in from GuMiho. And he's going to find 5 lurkers that were just kind of on their own. That was a bit of a weird move from Serral.
Yeah, that was a super hard punish there from GuMiho. I mean, he can take care of that so quickly as well that the response over to the left side is not too slow either. It does look like the Panzer's going to go down. Not much you can do about that, I suppose. But again, maybe if he could get a couple of last-second snipes down, or actually even take this opportunity, just killing the lurkers. Just a lot of Banelings exploded. Also saw those Brood Banelings, so he knows that's in play. Maybe to go for an attack, but that's kind of like I'd say a lot of Terran players in this stage are kind of just saying that they're never going to attack. That is the default. Even though there might very technically be an opportunity, it is just so difficult to move across the map unless you are moving literally from your 5th to their 7th, which I think should happen. I think this bait that Serral, no, you don't get that one. But GuMiho is just so wary of all the other points of entry that he hasn't actually gotten over to the left side or the right side to punish anything.
Yeah, you really... You're just scared right now because he exposed a bit of his army to go after that. Hold that thought. We are going to be seeing an attack coming in from Serral. Not a lot of tanks in position. One of them that will get abducted. A couple of Liberators doing a good job. Baneling's not going to be able to connect with the Ghost. A wise pullback from Serral right there. I think if he pushed into that, he loses basically all the Banelings and doesn't really get anything. So very mature decision. But still gets a couple of pickoffs. We do have to mention, resources lost is actually 7, almost 8,000 in favor of GuMiho, which kind of feels surprising, because it feels like Serral's been the one making plays, but GuMiho is just, he understands his position very well, and yeah. I'm very impressed with it. We do see, obviously, the income advantage heavily favoring Serral, and if Serral manages to mine a significant amount of resources from that top left base and the middle right base, what can GuMiho really do? That is nightmare territory. But chances are he should be able to wipe out at least one of those bases in the next little bit.
I would say chances are, yes, but then like 60-40 actually, maybe. Like 60% that he does. So not even that much of a favored situation for GuMiho. Because Serral is playing, I think, at an incredible pace.
Yes.
You mentioned kind of his tempo is certainly in the lead, and I absolutely agree with that. But just the pacing of his technology adaptation, he's willing to... What used to be considered almost experimental is just now a part of Serral's process. So setting up these infestors used to be kind of more of like a, oh, this is a cool idea after a billion attempts to break the Terran. Now it's just something that he immediately goes into and is a true threat to GuMiho's situation. So as soon as GuMiho is like, this is something I deserve, I'm basically supposed to be able to clear up this base, Serral is going to have this other opportunity to pounce exactly like that, but denied thanks to the help of a Liberator. So it didn't actually work out too well, but it also wasn't all of Serral's armies. He moves over to the left side. Liberators and tanks are sieged up, but a couple of quick yoinks right there will take care of things, and at the very least, SCVs will fall.
Man, Serral is so methodical. He is just comfy in these situations. You look at that, you see the setup that you were talking about. He has this beautiful move. Oh, there is another bird infestor, but I mean, there's tanks there. There's more ghosts. They're cloaked anyway, so you can't see them. But he recognizes that pushing it on one front is not going to cut it. I will say, I just want to see the Neural Parasite. I think the Neural Parasite, the double EMP, these ghosts are so clumped up. And even if you don't get all of them, if you get, 2/3 of them, that was incredibly worth. And I feel like he just missed a bit of an opportunity as GuMiho resplits.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there it is.
He doesn't... The thing is that do we even have the EMP upgrade? Oh, right? I don't think so. But yeah, okay, we did actually. Yeah, that does sound familiar. Hello. Okay, yeah. My bad, but it doesn't look that way because a lot of the ghosts still have energy, right? You're going to need a couple of EMPs. So it's not the end of the world. And I do still think that a fungal would be more end of the world. So that maybe is why Serral first attempted to do it. He's going to attempt it here too. There's already a bit of a split, however, so some of the ghosts may survive with this concave. But undoubtedly, Serral is the one that is still winning. He's got 6,000 minerals and almost 6,000 gas in the bank. And GuMiho is running out of options to perfectly defend every single base. Either he doesn't have enough splash, or he doesn't have enough of the single target units. I mean, he's getting kind of desperate. He's trying to move out and do something after that attempted break, but even that's not quite working out. It's just a kind of trail of lings start to bother his tanks. Maybe Serral needs to wait a little bit, and then he can take care of this army.
The one thing I will say that's actually a big problem for Serral is his larva.
Seriously?
Yeah, he has no larva whatsoever. And the bank is gigantic, but he can't spend it effectively at this point because he's spending it all on these high larva units. The lings, the hydras, obviously banelings are an offshoot of lings, but it still requires a ton of larva. And that's going to allow GuMiho to restabilize this position. Now, we have to mention that Serral was actually able to mine a lot of resources from that top left. And he's even trying to retake the base here. That is what we call an optimist. He burrows a drone!
So whatever to bother him, right? Whatever to delay it. I do think that Serral is probably a little frustrated with that lack of larva. I feel like that actually was kind of a critical moment. Had he been able to max out as fast, I think is possible. I think GuMiho is in a very delicate position where you have just too few units to stop a flood of Zerg. But that moment passes fairly quickly, so just basically by the time the larva actually popped. So Serral maybe missed more of a punishing opportunity, but still eventually the larva popped. He did go back into Ling Baneling Hydra, not even really focusing on any more lurkers at this point. He's trying to take care of GuMiho with quantity, and it still is fair. It's pretty much working. I will throw out that if GuMiho is literally going to play a perfect game with a 15,000 resource difference, the lack of minerals on this map also starts to hurt Serral, weirdly enough, right? The fact that Serral's stealing GuMiho's minerals and gas is absolutely terrible for GuMiho, no doubt about that. But if it was an extremely big resource difference on the losses, there's even a chance that Serral would eventually run out of steam, right? But that is not the situation. Serral is, he's fine on the steam. It's not necessarily gaining steam, I suppose, but it's fine. And then eventually you might just be able to bulldozer GuMiho.
Yeah, exactly. It's something else that's important to note is that Serral did not start mining from the gases in the top left base. So he didn't steal those. And that is... I don't blame him for not, because it's, you know, an extra drone on each. It's not necessarily going to work out too well. Oh, nicely placed turret from GuMiho. He's caught on to Serral, to what Serral is doing. I think at this point, you want to go into Broodlords right now as Serral. I think you want to start finding a way to shell the ground. There's not going to be Vikings. Hold that thought. We are going to see an attack coming on in from Serral. The concave is pretty wide, and there are a couple of blinding clouds, but the tank line is so deep from GuMiho. That being said, we got Lings in on the top side, able to take down a couple of those tanks, and Serral will still get a trade that is plenty good enough, and GuMiho, he's broke as a joke right now.
Yeah, exactly. Serral finally having a over 100 Ling Remax there, so Larva was certainly available that time around. I think we'll be able to maybe even finalize the game with this next... Oh, well, maybe it's a hold, because GuMiho is pushing, but maybe with this next hold. A lot of ghosts are available, but just ghosts do not win a game when the Zerg player is still capable of maxing out. Tanks kind of don't cover themselves against a lot of Lings either. They do need some support. And Serral's insistence on going into just this... I guess, you know, it's not tier 3 units, right? It's Ling, Bane, Ling, Hydra, maybe some Infestors with those tier 2. It's, I think, really working out. I think there is a chance that it could have backfired. So, you know, you brought up Broodlords, and I think that is usually the punishing option, but I will say that we've witnessed a lot of Serral games, a lot of Zerg games in general, where they try and go into Broodlords against someone who does still have 15-plus ghosts, and that does sometimes not work out, right? Is the best way to put that. So I actually think that Serral very pointedly does not want to do that, so he's just thinking this is going to work out, and it absolutely has.
It certainly has. It's the kind of thing that I think you can use. I think you want to use them to break a position. And I feel like a little bit ago he could have used that, but he was able to break it with just those basic units. We are going to see a fungal growth coming on in on the Ghosts and the SCVs. Everything getting taken down. Baneling's coming on in, and it looks like this is going to be the final push. Serral looking to secure his position in the top 4 of the winners bracket. Top 6 in the tournament. Very well played from Serral.